What's up, guys? Carl from TDG here. Figured we'd go over a very quick rundown of the 3.26 patch notes, going over some winners, some losers, and just a very rough overview of what the ascendancy changes are going to be going forward into this patch. So without any further ado, let's jump right into this thing. So I think some of the major winners of this upcoming patch are going to be the golem buffs. So I think it's going to be very important to remember that when we're talking about these golem buffs, we can actually get up to a total of 4 of them if we're using the elementalist. So we'll talk about how that's going to work in combination later, but also that we can scale their effectiveness up to about 300%. So everything that we get for base numbers, we can multiply by 3 to get the full effectiveness. So for the first golem, let's look at the Chaos Golem, which is now going to be giving us anywhere between 17 and 51% Chaos Res, depending on the effectiveness that we have, anywhere between 30 and 48% dot multi on the higher side, again, all depending on the effectiveness that we have. The Chaos of Maelstrom giving us now 20 to 60% increased effectiveness of Wither on the high end, depending on that. Fire Golem is now going to be giving us 29 to 87% increased damage and 20 to 60% increased AoE. Plus, they are getting a 30% damage increase to their meteor skill itself. The Ice Golem is going to be giving us an insane crit chance going up to 120% with some flat accuracy, capping out on, I believe it was about 1200 or so. Lightning Golem is going to be giving us some flat attack speed and cast speed with some increases ranging between 10 and 30% based on the effectiveness, as well as some flat mana regen scaling between 18 and 54. Stone Golem is going to be keeping its life regeneration, and it is also going to be giving us 20% increased defenses, which again, if we scale this up, can give us a total of 60% increased armor and evasion. And I think Golems are going to end up in a really good spot this league with all of these changes being made, especially when we see that being put in combination with the elementalist changes that we'll talk about a little bit later. And what we're going to do here is I'm just going to pan through all of the skill changes that were made so that you guys could stop it and pause at any point during it to see any specific skills that may pertain to you or the builds that you're considering. But a very rough overview is that most things here were buffed by between 20 and 30% on a grand scale. And then we're going to dive a little deeper to look at some of the stuff that was nerfed. Most notably, we're going to be looking at the Frost Blades of Catabasis, the Fire Trap, Power Siphon, Lightning Strike, and also we're going to touch on Hex Blast. So first we're going to look at Frost Blades of Catabasis and how it is now being brought down into a damage effectiveness of 86% down from the previous 143 on the low side and down from 409 down to 240% on the top end level 20 gem. That is going to be a huge nerf, and I'm going to be interested to see how this plays out. Next, let's take a peek at Fire Trap, which is going to be brought down from a previous range of 32.5 to 3018.8 on the high side down to 27.7 to 2566 on the low side. Now this is going to be incorporating the damage over time component only, not the initial hit. So we're not going to have a major change in our ignites. So we should see something in the range of about a 7 to 10% DPS loss on the top side with this change. Not going to lie, this one felt really targeted towards the RF players and most notably Pox. Not really sure what we or he did to get on GGG's bad side here, but it'll be fun to see how we're able to continue to make this still work as intended and work as our major damaging ability. Power Siphon's another skill that seems to have gotten a damage effectiveness nerf, but that was seemingly compensated by some attack speed increases. This is looking more like a nerf that was targeted towards a delivery mechanism or a mine build. So this will be cool to see how this plays out. This one felt a little more targeted and should still be pretty good if we're doing self-casting. Next, let's hop in and look at Lightning Strike and Val Lightning Strike. So we're going to be seeing that the projectiles are getting nerfed here for the Lightning Strike, now dealing 50% less damage with hits and elements. And that the Veil Lightning Strike component of this is going to be having a 75% effectiveness of the base and added damage at level 1 down from the 114 and scaling up to 177 versus the previous 237. So this is going to be a pretty hefty nerf. I'll be honest, I'm not sure if this is going to be enough though to take it out of a top build. It might just be bringing it in line with a very strong build versus an absolutely overpowered one. And the last skill that I wanted to touch on for nerfs is going to be the Hex Blast skill, which is now going to have a 2-second cooldown in between uses. It's also going to have its blast radius increased. So this will be interesting because this is seemingly trying to make it so that we're not able to spam this out and it's not able to be used as a main damage dealer. But that is the main nerf that was for Hex Blast, which came in after the original post of the patch notes. some of the self-cast buffs that we're seeing here are in terms of Arcane Surge getting an additional more multiplier going up to 35% on the high side, also granting 30% increased mana recovery and 20% cast speed. You're seeing Archmage be brought down from 19% to 16% on the high side, which is about a 15% nerf, and we're also seeing Spellslinger have its mana reservation slashed down to 20% total at all levels. And one other major noticeable buff to self-cast is going to be the focused channeling support, which is going to be giving us 90% more damage per second spent on channeling skills up to a total of 60%, and then also having it cost up to 100% more for a trade-off of more damage for more cost. So now with the notable skill changes out of the way, let's take a look at the ascendancies. And I'm going to put the entire list of changes on screen here, but I'm going to really focus on about 3 or 4 of these ascendancy changes to highlight. The most notable ones for me are going to be the champion, where we're going to be getting the Fortitude ascendancy, which is going to be now giving us full or maximum fortification or fortify that we have. Previously it was set to 15, but this is going to be really impactful for a couple of different reasons. Most notably because whatever we're able to push our fortify to, whether that be 30, 40, or 50, we're going to just have that maximum amount at all times. So quickly, I'm going to go over a couple of different ways that we can start pushing that fortify. And one of them is going to come from an amulet, another from a glove, and then there's going to be, I believe it's 6 fortify that we can grab off the tree. And all of these together is going to add an extra 26 fortify at the maximum, plus some other stuff that you can grab along the way. So if we just take the example of having 40 fortify, and just hold on to that number for a second as we read the next bullet here. The unstoppable hero is now no longer giving us count as fortify, but now giving us 3% more armor and evasion per fortification above 20, and 3% increased attack speed per fortification above 20. That would mean that we're going to be getting an extra 20 stacks of fortify multiplied by 3% more armor and more evasion for 60% total, plus 3% attack speed per stack to give us a total of 60% increased attack speed, all of which are going to be permanently up for our buffs. Now, something that's also going to be really interesting if you read the amulet is that it's going to give you the maximum number of endurance charges per frenzy charges, which means if we path over to the right side of the tree, we can pick up an extra 3 frenzy charges for an extra 6 here, which would give us 6 total endurance charges for an additional 6 rather than 3 fortification stacks here. The Celestial Brace gloves that I mentioned earlier are going to give us, like I said, anywhere from 1 to 10 maximum fortification stacks, but they're also going to give us 1% increased attack speed per fortification. So that means that these gloves can also be giving us 40% increased attack speed on top of all of the other bonuses that we're getting from fortification. I think you guys can start to see why I'm getting so excited for Champion. All of these pieces are starting to come together very, very nicely, especially when we take a look at Steadfast here. We can see that for that last node, we can get 0.1% life per second per fortify, which would come up to about 4% life regen for one node. Again, just really stacking on and doubling down on our benefits here. It's really nice. And then briefly to touch on the Guardian, we're going to be grabbing Harmony of Purpose, which is going to be giving us shrines, and then the Unwavering Faith for reduced reservation cost. And then the Hierophant is probably the biggest nerf here that's going to be happening, no longer providing the 25% increased mana reservation efficiency and the 50% less mana cost of skills, but now just getting a 1% mana regen per second. That'll be pretty interesting to see how this plays out. Trickster here, really not a whole lot to talk about. It'll just be a little bit less of the best class for anything. And then lastly, I will cover the Elementalist in full here. So we're going to be getting the Shaper of Storm's Ascendancy, which is no longer going to have the 25% more effective lightning elements you inflict with hits, but rather is now going to have your hits always increase damage taken by at least 25%, up from the previous 15%. Shaper of Winter Ascendancy no longer is going to be making 50% more effective cold ailments you inflict, but rather it is now going to be causing enemies chilled by your hits to lessen their damage dealt by half of the chill effect. The Shaper of Flames Ascendancy passive is no longer going to be giving 25% more damage with ignites you inflict, but rather now is going to be causing enemies ignited by you to convert 40% of their physical damage to fire. Now, this is kind of a problem because ignited by you means you have to hit them first, so that means this is going to be an all or nothing type of skill. And now for the major change. It seems like the Elemancer is going to be having the Liege of the Primordial Ascendancy combined with the Elemancer. So we're going to be getting +2 golems to the Liege of the Primordial, and this is going to be on top of retaining its 100% effectiveness to golems and allowing them to auto respawn once we already have them. It's also going to be getting the elemental immunity for the golems, which is going to be massive as well. And another thing that makes this very strong, aside from what's included in the skill, is that how much power is actually being generated by one notable itself, which is going to effectively free up 2 more points for us to assign to other ascendancy passives for even more power going forward. And that's going to be it for me today, guys, looking over the patch notes for PoE's newest expansion 3.26 Secrets of the Atlas. So let me know down below, are you going to be jumping into 3.26? Are you going to be trying out PoE 1, 3.26? And if so, what builds are catching your attention as we get closer to the lead up of the league start? Leave a like if you liked it, comment down below, don't forget to share and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.